Hi, Jess.
Hi, Jason.
How are you? Happy
Huh,
Friday.
how many times do you think you've said Happy Friday?
A lot, but it is
On,
a great Friday. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good. Where can't hear you, Randy says.
Mm,
I can hear you.
okay. Hi, Randy. Good to see you. Can you hear Jason? Oh, can't hear me ask this question.
Oh, Alicia can't hear us either. Isn't that weird? Are we having some audio issues? Tiana can hear
Well,
us.
you all good? Alicia
Okay,
can
good.
hear. Okay.
Uh,
Sorry.
happy Friday. March 14th, Jess.
hmm I think I
How do you
know why
like
you
that?
picked that song.
Okay, well, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna play a quick, before we get started, we're gonna play a quick round of Name That Tune.
I love it.
Not the tune that I just played, but a different tune.
Okay.
Okay, ready? Here we go.
Is
Thoughts?
that all we get?
That's all I get.
I got nothing. There has to be. Oh, even Alicia needs more. Ooh, John has a guess.
John needs to go out and buy a lottery ticket.
No kidding. I think everybody's on to Pi Day.
Everyone is on the pie day, but do you have any pie?
I don't. I have something else. But there could have been two reasons you played this music. I have another interesting fact. I never have interesting facts for our music. But you know whose birthday it is today?
Oh,
Einstein.
oh,
It's like double
Einstein.
science day. Double science day, Pi Day and Einstein's birthday. And do you know who else's birthday it is? I know. I watched the Today Show this morning while I got ready.
Wow.
Because
Cool.
okay, I'm going to give you a hint, and I'm going to watch the chat and see who's fast enough because I bet we have some fans. I already said he shot his 4,000th three-pointer this week, and it's his birthday today. Aha!
Four.
Look how fast our chat is. Steph Curry's birthday today too. I am
Wow.
full of trivia.
Crazy. Do you have another one?
4,000. No, that's all I got.
Oh, okay.
That's crazy. 4,000 three-pointers? Nobody's ever going
Do
to
we
catch that.
look at all the people in the chat? For everyone in the chat, make sure you're on to everyone, not just to host and panelists, so we can see you. Do you believe that it's 5 years?
Happy 5-year anniversary. And thank you for,
Yeah, just look at this.
yeah, cheers.
Look at that. Cheers. Virtual cheers. Isn't
And
that
and we're
crazy?
and we're doing it like literally. Oh, thank you. We're did like craziness. You guys, like we sprinted here. This is this is the airport lounge in the Atlanta airport.
Yes, crazy, right? Oh, we can't cheers and not sip, Cynthia said.
Oh, true, true, true. Okay,
Sorry.
I'll do it. That was a fake sip.
Oh, sorry, eye contact too. That means I have to turn
Oh, and
around.
eye contact. Yeah, and I'm right behind.
Okay,
Uh,
good. Yes, we were in Atlanta and didn't tell you. Sorry, Tiana. It was
yes.
a very
Oh,
in and out trip. Next
and I've
time.
already got one AirPod dying. I'm going to charge one AirPod at a time. This is how we're
Here's
doing it.
here we go. So yes, Jess and I got to the airport. Atlanta traffic isn't good for those of you that don't know that. And oh, you're gonna see Jess next week in Atlanta. Yes, Jess, do you want to talk about who you're keynoting with next week? Like this is a pretty big deal. When I saw this online, I was like, what?
So was I. I'm like, what am I doing? No, I'm kidding. Uh, so I love working with ADP and attending a lot of their events, their analyst events, their client conference, which is Meeting of the Minds every year. And so I was already participating in their executive strategy summit. They do such a nice job of incorporating customer feedback and putting on such a nice event. And their opening keynote on Wednesday morning is an innovation showcase. It's just a big product update and direction and roadmap and where they're going with everything. And Shimon, their head of product, wanted a really big splash to bring him on stage. So I am the opening keynote on Wednesday morning at ADP's Meeting of the Minds. And I'm like the second keynote they announced. The first one was Malcolm Gladwell.
Wow.
So, you know, just kind of hanging out in good company,
Wow.
happy
Hanging
to
out with
do
the
it.
bigwigs, huh?
I know.
Wow. And then
No
someone just
big
said you're going
deal.
to be on presenting on the same stage that Carrie Underwood
Isn't that
performs
crazy?
on. Are we going to get some photos?
Yeah, I'm bringing Leah with me. I'm like, dude, if I'm going, you're going. If I'm going on stage, you're coming with me.
Wow.
Right? That
Very,
is a
very.
three-pointer right there.
Yeah, you're going to share a photo next week, right?
Yeah, I wrote it this week. It's kind of like a TED Talk. It's like a 15-minute, like I'm not the big deal. Shimon and the product team, and I'm just setting the stage. So it's like a 15-minute TED Talk. I wrote it this week. Leah's my designer, as always. Leah's been my right hand partner in crime for years now. And so nobody I would trust to bring this to life more. And so I'm bringing her with me as well. It's going to be, I'm so excited. I can't wait to see my own keynote.
I cannot wait to see. Um, oh, Lynn just said, hey, since you're going to be there, tell ADP to get speech recognition
Speech
AI on their
recognition.
report writer.
I've got your request in my pocket. I will bring it to Vegas.
Perfect. So, guys, really, really excited for today's show. It's going to be a little bit different because we're really celebrating a 5 year. And some of you that I tried to write a post about this. I know Jess wrote a post about this. We did a little video. If you don't follow us on LinkedIn, you can check it out there. But we started this show 5 years ago. And for those of you that are familiar, 5 years ago was when really we were thinking about what does COVID mean to us. I saw the post last night that 5 years ago, Major League Baseball shut down. I saw the post that 5 years ago, the day before, the NBA shut down. And all of us were kind of wondering what was going to happen. And for those of you that don't know, this show started because we wanted a way to communicate and to connect with people. And we used different platforms. We tried some stuff. It was very grassroots. The first one we had on, I think we had 8 people on. But it was just a way to get together and talk about what was going on, with COVID. And then very quickly after that, we ran into another pandemic, which was the social justice pandemic. And we kind of found ourselves, like I put in my LinkedIn post this morning, talking about crazy, stuff that you would have never even imagined that we were talking about. And really,
I
it's
know.
crazy to think that it was 5 years ago.
I know. I wish, no, I don't wish actually, because it would be weird. I like if our phones, just like our camera rolls, show us photo flashbacks and Facebook shows you memories and stuff. Like, can you imagine the 5 year flashbacks you would have of just headlines and remember going on Amazon and looking for supplies and everything is out of stock and
PPE. And like I was living in Los Angeles and I moved to Minneapolis because of COVID, and I would have never moved to Minneapolis. Think about all of the things that we did. And then I watched Minneapolis burn while I was
mm,
in Los Angeles. I'll never sit sitting there with my wife Heather and kids crying over,
hmm
like, I used to drive on that road and it's burning
yeah,
because of George Floyd on Memorial Day. So there's been so much. And then as I wrote this morning, we find ourselves 5 years, which is crazy, 5 years later. And we have a bunch of other crazy stuff going on, as you and I were talking about in the cab on the way here just a few minutes
mhm.
ago. Like we have an uncertain economy, uncertain, like what,
You
yeah,
could
yes,
say.
yeah, it's, yeah, yeah, you could say. We have the dismantling of some parts of the US government as we know it. We have geopolitical discussions that are crazy. Um, compared to what they were doing 5 years ago. So, there's a part of me that, as I was reflecting on it last night, I was like, wow, we did this 5 years ago to talk about healing. and getting everyone together to share thoughts. And 5 years later, we're kind of at that same level of uncertainty, only not tied to a health pandemic, but other things. I just wondered if what your thoughts are on that. And before we get into the green,
Mhm.
yellow, red, um, actually, maybe we'll do the green, yellow, red. So maybe it's a good. I'm sorry, Jess. Did you want to say something? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But if
No,
you
not
wanted
at
to
all.
add
I mean,
something,
I agree. And like, remember this meetup? The meetup was just the thing we did with the community. It was always and is still. God dang it. There go my AirPods. You guys good? You can still hear me okay?
very good. Yes,
We're just gonna get through this, aren't we? Um,
yes.
and everybody's gonna hear us now. No,
Oh, you want to borrow one of mine? No, just kidding.
it was always about the community first, giving everybody a safe space to connect and be connected, to feel connected. Remember lockdown and everything was crazy. So it was literally a place to gather when we couldn't physically gather. And I think that's still what it's all about. And I love the comment about creating a space. Where did Leah's comment go about like-minded people? Yeah, hard to find a community of like-minded people. Like-minded or not, a safe space to be authentic, to have real conversation, to figure it out together, to ask better questions. And it's still that space for everybody for different reasons.
And it's crazy. 250 plus shows later, 1.5 million people or downloads of the podcast. And I'm still going to ask the same question I asked that day. How are
Yeah.
you? Which I think is the most important question we can ask right now. Green, yellow, red. Green, you're great today. Yellow, so so. Red, not so good. And then I'm going to ask another question after that. But let's start with the green, yellow, red, because we've been doing it for 250 plus episodes here, almost every single Friday, wherever people are in the world. Ellie's all three colors. It's a great answer. Frank, yellow, green, green, yellow, green, green. We've got some greens. Um, I did a keynote earlier this week in New York, and I started with this question. And I hope that by, I hope some of you have incorporated this question into some of your team meetings, because I think it's really important to ground yourself this way first. Jess, how are you? Green. I love Christine. I love what Christine just said. Green for the first time in a few weeks, which feels good. Um, uh, there's Meredith. You start to see some of these names, and I also like they bring back a son of Teary at times. But yeah, it's good to see these. I like how people have built this into some of their meetings.
Yeah.
How are you, Jess?
I'm green. This community gives me energy. I've been around this week, spending time with different teams, a lot of internal conversations, driving a lot of our messaging and thought leadership into the market and doing some of that internal enablement and
You
alignment.
were in Europe, weren't you?
Yeah. Just bopping around a little bit. But it's been good. I love share, like we push so much messaging out, marketing, and we talk to the industry so much. It's good to spoil ourselves and make sure we're giving ourselves that same education and alignment and making sure we all understand the opportunity in the market that we're meeting. I feel like people don't spoil themselves enough by sharing all of their good stuff internally as much as we share it externally. So that makes me super green.
Yeah, I think it's a great. I mean, it's a great answer, and like for me, I'm the same way. And I think that uh, for me, I'm green because I've been around people this week who are talking about things, you know, and um, and I think when I say talking about things, being open and honest and being authentic when it comes to some of these types of discussions. And what I wanted to do is I really wanted to take it one. So, and thank you guys all for sharing. What I wanted to do is take it kind of one step further this time and be like, okay, based on the fact that you said green, yellow, red, and we're celebrating 5 years, I wanted to ask this question. Not do you use TikTok daily? But I'd love for you to answer that one too. Do you use TikTok daily? Jess, TikTok daily?
Nope, not one bit, not ever. It's on my phone only because Bailey, that was the only way to get it authorized because her dad wouldn't approve it. So, but no, I'm not a user. I suppose I consume TikTok content when it's shared in other platforms. So maybe secondary.
Okay, so 5% to 95%. 95% no, 5% yes. I thought that's really
Surprising.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, do you think it's surprising or do you think it's real?
Uh, it is surprising to me. Like regardless of demographic, I think it's the biggest user base of any platform in the world. Um, regardless of
So,
demographic. So a little surprising.
so now, if you have the same, I want you to take a second and I want you to think about this, if it's okay. Think about 5 years ago. Okay. You got
Mm.
this, everyone? Think about 5 years ago. Think about how you felt 5 years ago and answer this question. Are you more optimistic 5 years ago?
Mm.
Or are you more optimistic today? Are you more optimistic 5 years ago? Or are you more optimistic today?
Interesting
It
question.
is interesting, isn't it? It is really interesting. Are you more optimistic 5 years ago or more optimistic today? Based on everything going on in the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's Marissa, it's it's on purpose. It should be hard to answer that question. But look at those results. It's fascinating, right? Because look what we have. We have it's almost 50-50,
Yeah,
isn't it?
that's
It's
interesting. I think
it's
if I were to answer
Bill.
that,
Hold on one sec. Bill, I
yeah.
love your answer. I see more smiles today without masks on. I love that. Um, I love that answer. Look at the results, Jess.
Mhm.
It's exactly 50-50. 51-49. 51% said 5 years ago they were more optimistic. 49% today. So what let's break that down. Like that's crazy, right? Global pandemic, biggest moment of change ever, probably when it comes to work, digitization, et cetera, et cetera. If you remember back on our first episode, you remember what I said? I said 2020 is going to be a movie. And we're going to
Mhm.
look back on it 5 years later and we're going to say we were all part of what happened in that movie. Okay. Now we're 5 years later, it's 2025, and 50% of the people are still probably not as optimistic as they were 5 years ago. What do you think?
I would agree. I mean, I agree with the comments about, I think we're more resilient. We've shown each other, we've proven to ourselves that we can navigate the weirdest shit in the world. But I also kind of agree with Kelly's comment. The unknown was super scary then. And I would say the unknown feels pretty scary now. Even though we're resilient and we've proven we can go on a wild roller coaster ride and come out the other side. I feel like we're on another roller coaster ride right now. And like COVID, this one is a little hard to understand or see where it might be going. Um, yeah, interesting times.
Can I do one more?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you guys for doing this because this is really interesting. What do you think about this one? Were you in more control of your life 5 years ago or today? Once again, we're not, these aren't political questions. Just like, whoa, these are good. I'm making these up as I go, you guys, based on how you guys are responding. But it's really, really, look at Christine, great question. It's really, really interesting. Do you feel like you had more control 5 years ago, or do you have more control today? Same.
Ooh, learn to
Today, I love that
false
because I learned
control.
how to trust others. False control 5 years ago,
Hmm.
different. Less hope today, but more control. That is a great answer. More control over what I do with information. I felt I had more control of me, my people, and surroundings.
Mm.
How would you answer that one, Jess? Do you feel
I,
more in control
I,
of your life today or 5 years ago?
Okay, I'm gonna go really deep on all of you. I have never felt more sense of peace in my life until I learned how to give up control. I don't
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
try to control everything. And that probably started with my divorce and kind of single momming it, which is like 8 or 9 years ago now. And I realized how much freedom and sense of peace there was, and actually a weird sense of self-control by just sort of relinquishing what I did not need to hold or carry or worry about. I'm really good at ruthless prioritization of what belongs in my space, my headspace, what gets my attention, what I let have control over my life. I'm pretty ruthless, like what gets in, what I push out. And that actually, yeah, and that actually gives me not perfect peace, but gives me the yard that I have to work with.
I mean, I love these comments, you guys. Like, I mean, this is why I wanted to do this episode like this because I think it's so important. And I know a lot of people listen to this later or watch it later, but cancer made me very good at setting boundaries. Like, oh shit moment. Thank you, Nicole, for being open like that. It's taken me years though to do the work to get to this point in my life. Thank you for saying that. More self-love equals more control and peace. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Um, Ruthless prioritization. I love that you said that, Jess, because I think that's really important. Control what you can control today. What do you think about Leah's comment? Is that the meaning of surrender? Like
Um,
surrender is an interesting word, don't you think? Surrender is an interesting, it kind of feels like you're giving up.
Oh no. I'm trying to teach this to my oldest right now. It's so hard being a girl, being a teenager, a preteen, being a kid. Forget, it's not specific to girls, but I feel like girls in particular. And I'm coaching Ainsley, like there's so much that um bothers her, and she's anxious and she worries about things and she overthinks some things, but she's also really smart. So overthinking is not a bad thing, to have a discerning mindset and critical thinking about the world. But my answer to her sometimes, especially when it comes to people and drama and, high school BS, I'm like, I tell her all the time, you are giving too many things too much access to you. And I don't know when and where I learned that, but there aren't that many things that get to bother me because they don't get that level of access to me. Um, if I could
But
teach more people that skill.
yeah, say it again. So I think it's really important.
So for Ainsley, I tell her she just gets on these things and she gets so wrapped around the axle and like she sweats things and she whatever. And I said, you give too many things, too much access to you. And that takes some like learning and discernment and how you build that as a skill, how you create boundaries, what you let get. And sometimes this gets confused, by the way. Some people think that you don't care about everything. Like, oh no, I do. I actually over care about a lot of things, which is why I have to be careful with my energy and my emotions and my time. And it's not that I don't feel a great sense of compassion and empathy for absolutely everything that everybody experiences, but does that get my time and energy? Like I've got a span of control that includes my children and the other things that I care deeply about, and they can't have the full impact that I'm able to give them if I'm diluting it too much. So that's how I think about it. I think it takes practice. It's like yoga, it takes practice.
What do you think about the comments in the chat that say let them?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I haven't that's a book, right? Who is that? Who that's is it Mel Robbins? I don't Yes, thank you. It is Mel Robbins. I'm familiar and I follow her on Instagram, old people version of TikTok. I know I should read
Mo-
it. Apparently I'm aligned with the thinking, which doesn't surprise me. What's her other thing? The 5-second rule? That's another thing that she wrote. And I did read that one. Hey, Brian, thanks for joining. Yes, I will read that, but it's sort of the don't worry about it. Let them is the way I understand it. But somebody is welcome to share more.
So I think that one of the things that's really, really interesting about the time that we have now is that we learned from 2020, and I'm going to just try to summarize. We learned from 2020 to 2025 to have more control of our inner self. I think that if we could go back and listen 5 years ago to our episode, we probably said, "Oh, we have no idea what's going to happen." And we probably felt more like it was going to happen to us. And I know people have been saying this, but I truly, truly think that we now have a better sense of what do we need to do. I think we're probably stronger in being able to say, let's tune it out. But I want to poke on it for a second because I want this episode to be memorialized because I want us to 5 years from now, which we will still be doing this, go back and
So I should
say,
have charged my AirPods for this moment.
dude, it's all just a
I'm doing
clusterfuck.
one
It's
at a
every week.
time.
Every week it's just a cluster, but it's what makes it beautiful. Messy is beautiful,
That's right.
right? So,
Yes.
when we move forward and we look back at this 5 years from now, you know, what do you think the message is? So, when we're going through this massive political divide in the United States, um, now so I could say that some other people would say, "Oh, I don't see anything. I don't see any divide." We're not commenting on that in this episode. You were in Europe this week. I was in the Middle East 2 weeks ago. A lot of um, visibility to me about how the United States is no longer the superpower that we once were in a lot of different ways. Once again, this isn't a political conversation. This is just a discussion. And if we look forward to 2030, I know that sounds crazy, but when we look forward to 2030, what do you think the feel is going to be? Do you think the feel is going to be that we've even learned more about how to control ourselves? Do you think that by 2030, we're going to be sitting here saying all of our control has been taken away, which I hear some people talk about a lot? So now that we've kind of said we're better at this, what do we do between 2025 and 2030 as humans to stay sane? Is it more of the same or does the tactic change?
So I'm going to give you guys a preview of my keynote next week. I talk about first of all, the whole thing is sort of how the social contract of work has changed. And I talk about two concepts: the erosion of trust, the state of trust, which is an erosion of trust right now, and the rise of agency. And I paint this picture in the context of employee experience and employee engagement and our relationship with work and the balance of power and that kind of thing. But I see this playing out. I see those two things playing out: the state of trust and the rise of agency. And I hope what's happening in the world from a macro trend perspective doesn't cause us to retreat and self-isolate out of protection and put our guard up. And I am worried about control and trust. And I think the rise of agency can be a good thing for lots of reasons. But
Jess, I want to talk about the trust if I could for a second, because once again, I've gotten a chance to hear Josh Burson a couple of times talk this week. And, like I said, everyone takes pictures of the slides and things like that. And while I was with him in New York City, everyone took a picture of his slide saying that trust was at an all-time low. And when he said that, and a lot of people took pictures of the slide, he actually didn't say why. He just said trust was at an all-time low. And of course, my brain, where do I go? I'm like, how did this happen? Like, what caused trust to get to the all-time low? And I'd love the community to tell us in the chat, or feel free to come online. Like, why do
Mm,
you think trust got there? Trust of companies, Ellie, trust of government, trust of society. Um, what he was talking about when he was speaking was trust in companies
mhm.
specifically. Um, but I'm going to read some of these for those of you that don't get a chance to be on live. Leah said, "There's zero trust now. Imagine me trying to keep up with the news and going to BBC and other foreign news channels now because I don't trust what we're hearing." Paul, I think what we might be missing is the significance of what's going on. Why do we need to be this resilient?
Mm,
Increased met of publicized meanness.
mm,
Facts become subjective. Several times we were gaslit and our trust was violated. Lack of transparency and honesty. Leaders, media were proven to be lying over and over again. I feel like I'm always being hustled by outside forces, not
mm.
being sure of others, a feeling of manipulation by tech companies. People are tired. Too many
Mm.
organizations treat comms as a branding exercise rather than a chance to
Yeah.
build trust. Anger has
Ah,
clouded our judgment. Like, again, like I'm starting to get a little weepy just reading these, but this is a lot.
you
Lack of
guys, I think you
transparency.
all just made it on stage with me next week. I think I'm going to screenshot this chat and put it up on a
Like that,
50-foot
this,
screen. This is
like, think
it.
about like so is this a pandemic? Or is this a trust pandemic? I don't want to make fun of the pandemic because people lost lives and things like that, which we might be now. But is this a trust pandemic?
Yeah, all of the things. I know, Nicole. Yeah, all of the things that you guys have said. You know the expression "no news is good news." That's not true. No news is bad. So when people are silent, when there's not clear communication, when there's a lack of transparency, when you don't know if you can even, is data, like what's fact, like how to fact check and discern truth. Like I feel like we're having to work really hard to discern truth these days. We're having to, like, there's a lot. It's a constant fire hose of information and news and headlines, and so that's a taxing exercise in itself if you even bother to do it. um,
But if we gauge that, let's say 5 years from now, do we think this trust continues to erode?
yes, and I
Yes,
and so
or do you
then the
think there's
more
going to
you
be something
know,
that changes that?
so then there's the opposite problem. The more you know, like for those of you who do read and study and consume it all every day, that's also exhausting. And does it get us anywhere better or positive? Like what do we do with all of this information? Back to span of control, I guess. For those of you who like to geek out on the trust topic, Edelman Trust, of course, publishes a lot of great research about this. And Edelman tells us the institution we trust the most, media, government, social institutions, all of the options, business, consumer brands, we trust the employment, we trust work, our employer, more than any other institution. And we don't even trust them all that much to have our back, to have fair, equitable policies, to keep us when times are tough. Look at all of the layoffs that are happening in the federal sector, outside the federal sector. So we don't trust you to care about us unless we matter to you. That's still the state of trust when it comes to the employment relationship. And so when people ask me to, is employee experience important? Why does it come in the top priority list of all people priorities? Employee experience, we build employer brands and employee value propositions. And I'm sort of like, I mean, I'm as optimistic as they come. And I'm like, yeah, that stuff matters, and culture and all of this stuff, until people aren't important to you anymore. That's only trustworthy if you keep those promises when people are no longer as valuable to you. And I think that's what we're seeing play out in a lot of ways right now.
So I think that's great. I love that conversation. I want to keep going back to it over and over again, but I also want to talk about the second part of your speech, which is agency.
Mm,
Okay. So you mentioned agency. Okay. And we're going to do a little exercise with the community here in a second about one big thing, which is giving you some agency. But talk about agency and what you're going to talk about there.
Yeah. So I think that's a little bit, it has to do with the balance of power and, whether or not you come from a place of privilege, if you feel a sense of self-authority to make decisions that are good for you. And I think we've seen that in terms of the social contract of work. People want to work for personal fulfillment. They want to connect with employers, not just brands. We put our money where our mouth is when it comes to choosing consumer brands and putting energy into companies and causes that we care about. We expect that with our employers as well. We want to work for employees who we think are not just good for us, but they're good for the world. They're doing good things. They have a mission and a set of values that we feel aligned with. And we won't work for them if we don't feel that way. That was not true of our parents and grandparents. You punched a clock, you kept your head down, you waited in line for a promotion, or you wrote it out till your pension kicked in. I don't think we had, which is funny. Like my mom grew up in the 60s and it's funny that there were a lot of civil rights movements and causes, but we didn't really execute it that way when it came to work. That just wasn't the nature of the relationship. And that's not true anymore.
So I want to go into this because I just put it in the chat. I think we're talking more about AI agents.
Yes.
Than we're talking about agency. Which
did you think
is
I was talking
interesting.
about agents?
No, but I think the words
Good.
are very similar.
That is interesting.
And I want to try to think about how do we blend a human machine world of agency, which I don't think humans have enough of, with agents, which is where a lot of us are moving towards, or that's where a lot of the world is moving towards. I'm just poking.
Oh, I love this.
I don't know if anyone knows actually what agency.
I got that question this week a lot because I talked about AI. I did workshops and people are like, what are I was literally presenting to one of our own leadership teams. And somebody was like, I'm sorry, this is stupid question. There is no stupid question, trust me. She goes, what is an agent? You've said it a couple of times. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't assume that everybody is geeking out over what's being built and what's coming and what all of this is. So the fact that technology exists that can fully transact, fully autonomous, complete an entire interaction or workflow. Imagine applying for a job and an agent, something like imagine a little robot scurrying in your machine. Sorry to be so simplistic. Just does everything for you. It says, oh, great. I've got some profile data over here. I see here's an online application over here. Don't worry, I've got this. And it just completes all of the fields, submits. That's a stupid example. Imagine open enrollment for benefits. And you go, you already have my employee file, same as last year. Imagine if I only had to say same as last year. I didn't have to touch a button, complete a field, and an agent just went in and completed. Imagine onboarding. How helpful would this be for onboarding? We just completed a hire, meaning I dispositioned them in the applicant tracking system, hired status. Imagine something, not a human, doing everything that happens then, generating the offer letter, provisioning equipment, notifying the hiring manager. That can now be possible.
But what does it mean yes, cool, agents. Thank you for that definition. But what happens when we put agents on top of humans with no agency?
That's the worrisome part. We have to think through those scenarios.
I like what Bryce said. You get yucky or screwed. That's what I'm scared about. Is because I think we've lost, a lot of people feel like we've lost agency, yet we're moving towards an agent-driven world. And what does that mean?
I read this.
Go ahead.
You probably know this word, Jason. I'm not coming up with it off the top of my head. Agent language. What is that? So now there's this thing. I just read it this week. There's something new every week. Like agents will recognize each other. Let's say you're integrating some technology and you need to build an API. you can tell an agent to go out and fetch whatever it needs to complete that integration, to build against the API. Like that's also
multi-context protocol, MCP.
Okay, there was another word I don't remember. There was something else. Anyway, so if an agent recognizes an agent in the completion of a workflow, they'll see that they're interacting with an agent, not a human, and they can just bypass. Can we just speak agent language now, or do we have to do natural language processing and do all the conversion of language so that we can understand each other? That's crazy to me. That's scary to
Yep,
people.
for sure. So I want to do one big thing.
Yes.
Okay, like we always do, but I would like the community to think, well, we talk about our one big thing, about your one big thing 5. So OBT 5. And I'm not going to ask you to do this, Jess, unless you want to, but what's your one big thing over the last 5 years that you feel that you've accomplished? Jess, if you want to do this week, it's fine, but because you're on the spot. But what I would love the community to do is think about, if you just had one thing, if you could say one thing that you're proud of, that you've accomplished in the last 5 years, what would it be?
Oh, I love this. See, this is where I could just sit and read the chat because I love everybody sharing. I guess if I were to, because we've been so visible, it's a weird word, like we've been so engaged with the community, we've created this space and we're the visible part of it, but you guys are all like part of it. But we're visible, we show up every week, we're on camera, we're authentic. And I've heard that more in the last 5 years than add up the years of my life, which is thank you for being real and authentic. And for other women and other working moms and other, just fill in the blank, that means something. That's important because they see maybe a version of themselves or they see something they relate to on screen. I always appreciate the gratitude we get from the community, like, oh, thank you, I learned something, or I met that guest was amazing, or I made a connection, or that's amazing. That's what a community should be for. But if that authenticity gives a sense of permission for other people to just drop the masks and just be real, you don't need to ask for permission to be you, to be imperfect. And if that has done something in the last 5 years, then check, life complete, like good. We did something important.
That's awesome. I'm gonna tie mine to something that happened this week, but it made me think about 5 years. So very few people know the story. Definitely my wife and kids know the story. Actually, I'm not sure my kids know the story, and a few others know the story. But as I was flying into New York City on Sunday, I was one of those. You know how you get on a flight and you're like, I hope there's no problems on this flight. I hope there's no problems on this flight. I hope there's no problems on this flight. I happened to be on one that there was a problem. So, we're flying from Minneapolis to LaGuardia, and 25 minutes before we land, the pilot comes on and says, we have a maintenance issue. And the only way we're going to fix this maintenance issue is by diverting to JFK. So instead of going to LaGuardia, we go to JFK. So I was, in the back of my head, and I was texting with Heather, my wife, and I was like, it's interesting. I wonder why we're going to JFK. And she texted back, she's like, they must have parts that LaGuardia doesn't have. And I was like, okay, makes a ton of sense. So then 10 minutes later, the pilot comes on and says, both of our air brakes are disabled, and we will be landing in approximately 15 minutes. And what I'd like you all to do is to watch the flight attendants, because they're going to teach you how to brace yourselves. A, and B, it's going to be an aggressive, violent landing. So for 15 minutes, and it just got me thinking, for 15 minutes, I had the time to think to myself, like, if I only have 15 minutes, that was what I thought, because I was watching the flight attendant sweat while this came on. I said, if I only had 15 minutes, what would I be thankful for? It's crazy. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. And one of the things I was I thought to myself is, wow, 5 years ago, I moved from Los Angeles to Minneapolis, which was a weird thing. And a bunch of people still ask me, why the F did I do it? Because of the weather. But I got to spend some amazing time with my mom and my sister, and I got to have them, my uncle, aunt, got them to get to know my kids a bit. Um, I got to spend time with people that I like kind of just pushed to the side because I moved to LA for a different reason. Um, so like what I started thinking about, I'm like, wow, in 5 years I did that. In 5 years, I like watched my one kid graduate and be really happier than ever in Singapore and Malaysia. I watched another one that's about to graduate
Mm.
and be happier than ever. I'm like, wow, I'm really thankful for that. I texted my wife. I said, love you. I texted both boys and said, love you, even though I didn't tell them why I was saying love you, which I'm sure they were freaking like, what the heck's going on? But then I thought about this community. I was like, holy cow, in 5 years, like we built this group of people that a bunch of people text me.
I
Like
know.
I did a LinkedIn post and a bunch of people texted me this morning saying, congratulations on your anniversary. And I was like, th- I'm just really lucky to be alive and really lucky to be human. Um, and I better end the story about the plane. Luckily, like, but you had 15 minutes, which by the way, felt like 15 hours because you're like, whoa, like this might be it. And like,
Mm.
what should I put in my pocket? I even videoed the landing. So I was like, I hope if I video this landing, someone can use it. Like if we all burn, somehow my phone won't burn to help someone later on. Luckily we landed and it was a hard landing. Um, and there were fire trucks everywhere and police there, but we landed. And I was like, oh my God, that exercise to me made me feel like extra, 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 extra vulnerable and extra, 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 extra human and extra, 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 extra thankful to be alive and to know the people
Mm.
that I know and to have the people I have in my life. So
Mm.
like that was my one big thing this week. Even though I did a lot of really cool other stuff this week, but that was my one big thing this week because I wouldn't have been able to do it. I wouldn't have been able to do any of that other stuff that I did this week or have the
Mm.
conversations I had or anything else if that would have turned a different direction.
Wow. Wow. I happened to read this thing on Instagram or whatever. This woman's post went viral because she was diagnosed with breast cancer 12 hours before she had her baby. And so she was like, she had this birth announcement, like, like, yay, my baby has arrived, like the baby announcement. And she also had to share, and I've been diagnosed with breast cancer. And her post went viral because she said, you don't understand, this baby, like, just saved my life because I was going in weekly for well baby checks and pregnancy checkups and stuff. We found it. It's like early, like, it'll be fine. She's very optimistic. She said, I know it sounds like a oh shit moment, and it is, believe me. But she said, if I had not been pregnant and due any day, we never would have found this. I would not have had any reason to go to the doctor and be getting all these scans and whatever. Talk about perspective. It was no wonder her post went viral.
Yeah. So speaking of that, the other thing, and I'm just going to put it in the chat, because the other thing I was doing on that plane, weirdly, was writing a post. And I literally hit save on the post, and I was hoping that I was able to hit save on the post. And I, for a second, thought it was going to be the last post I was ever going to write, um,
Oh my gosh.
which was all about, and the
Oh
title
yeah.
of it was Finding a Spark. And spark to me is self awareness, perspective, appreciation, resilience, and kindness.
Mm.
So, I put a link in there, but I was sitting on the plane because I had a really bad weekend for a number of different reasons: self awareness, perspective, appreciation, resilience, and kindness. For some of you that were on the call last week, you remember that I had to take a call from my sister,
Yes.
an emergency call. I didn't know what the emergency was, but the emergency call
You
was,
asked, is it an emergency? And she said yes.
and she said
So you
yes,
trusted.
exactly. And the emergency was her at the time, and not that I didn't say it on the call last week, but her dog was ill.
Mm.
And she was taking the dog to the vet. She had to put her dog to sleep. Um, and one of the things that made me realize is there's a lot of people who have a lot of things going on in their life that sometimes you don't know. It's not always visible. And like when the world feels heavy, how do you give people a spark? You know? And just to end that story really quickly, she read it.
I love this.
Yeah, she went out and
Your
bought a dog.
sister
That
read
my
it
sister read
and
it.
saw she
She
was
went out,
mentioned.
saw she was mentioned, went out and bought a dog this week and named it Sparky.
And
So
have you
it
met this
just,
dog yet?
I have
Your
not met the dog
namesake?
yet. My namesake. But one of the things I thought was so interesting about it is I was like, wow, it gave her the spark to do that because she was so down and she was so depressed to the point where I felt guilty getting on the plane without going to see her. And what it did is give her the spark to go do something. And it just made me realize the power of content and the power of sharing and the power of being able to talk like that. Because if I wouldn't have written it, she's probably still depressed and
Yeah.
she'd probably still be like the way she was. So I just wanted to share that also. And it's pretty deep stuff, but I just wanted to share that
Well, I
also.
like the suggestion that Sparky is probably our new community mascot. You can tell your
I think
sister.
that so not most people don't know my relationship with my sister. That might be going a little far for what we need for this community, but we'll take that
Are we
into
talking about
consideration.
ruthless prioritization and boundaries now? Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. That might be going a little far, but
Span of control.
we'll keep Sparky in our mind. But I didn't see a lot of people talk about their one big thing over 5 years, and maybe it's because you're listening to my story about the flights. But like, what's one big thing? Like, what's Nicole? By the way, Nicole, who just made the comment in the chat, has a beautiful Substack. Maybe she can put a link in there. For those of you who
Yes.
don't use Substack, it's so nice. Leah, mine is being a good mom and starting my own consultancy in the last couple of years.
Yes.
And
Yes.
congratulations, Leah. And I hope that I mean, I love what the work that Leah does, and it's so fun to be able to partner with her. Nicole said 5 years was finishing my dissertation, which
Wow.
that's an amazing accomplishment. Um, everyone has one. So like everyone has at least one. There's a part of me that doesn't want to move on without getting two teenagers through COVID
Yes.
and both in college. I think that's so amazing. Um, Randy, after 6 rounds
Oh,
of IVF,
Randy.
having a 2.5-year-old baby boy, or excuse me, a 2-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Amazing. Mine was standing up for my own mental health and changing jobs. See, these are oh
Mm.
my gosh, these are the things. These are the things that I want to make sure that we don't lose, and the stuff that makes life beautiful, the search for meaning and finally finding it. I can't be the caregiver others need me to be if I don't take care of myself first. Setting boundaries and routines which are authentically true to who I am unapologetically. Mother built my home 13 hours away, Iowa to Texas, and moved. Best decision I've ever made. I cannot think of one as I have many, which I think is amazing. New job, new granddaughter, leaving an employer where I was comfortable and loved my coworkers to a new adventure.
Mm.
Certifying in trauma informed coaching and
Yep.
being a Grammy.
Senior Grammy.
These are like
Oh,
just think about 5 years, guys. Like,
I
I mean,
know.
like we've been doing this for 5 years. New job, grew in my knowledge and skills during COVID. And for those of you that don't want to put it in the chat, that's totally cool. But I highly encourage you to think about it
Yeah.
because
I love,
sometimes sorry, go ahead.
well, Jaycee is our current producer behind the scenes. But we've had many over the years, and thank you to all of you, including Leah and Josh and Allie and Alicia has helped so many people. But I love what Jaycee told us right before and Jaycee, I hope it's okay that I share, and you can come on with us if you want. But she told us she used to hate Fridays. She used to sweat that. Like this was like her most anxious day of the week because she had to produce this broadcast and we were on remember when we were on Zoom, we got Zoom bombed and there were crowd control
Oh my
issues.
gosh. Yeah.
And then we moved to Crowdcast, and it was great for so many reasons, but it was very unstable. And like she felt responsible to like put on a good show for everybody and to like create this, not just safe, but like stable, literally stable broadcast in space.
I mean, the thing about
And
the
I
thing
hate
about
knowing that we used to
just
be her red thing, by the way.
we have to finish just before because I know people are going to leave, and before people leave, I want to say thank you. But
Yes.
yeah, we are so stable, you and I, as people. Like we
Yes.
prep, we give her so much lead time, all that other stuff. Like you'd surprised she'd be anxious, wouldn't you?
But then she's told us, and then I would come on or we would start and you guys would start and you were so like chill and whatever and real and like took the pressure off. Thank God. I feel terrible knowing she was like, we were making her red and anxious. And then she said, as soon as you'd go live, I was fine. I was Drean because like, we don't care. We have no ego about this. Like, we'll figure it out. We've bombed and like literally had to send out a new link and like get back on.
So yeah.
That's
So Jaycee,
that's psychological safety right there.
Jaycee, Leah, Josh, Kristin, there's kids screaming as usual. Thank you for everything you do. And because people leave early, like I just want to take a second and say thank you. Thank you guys so much for being here for 5 years. Thank you for helping us get to 5 years. There's no reason we do this except for you. 'Cause and the love that you guys bring and share back. So I just want to say thank you. And I'm so excited to celebrate another 5 years, 5 years from now with you and grow with all of you. Just I'll let you close it up.
That would mean coming off mute. These kids over here are having a ball. They're so cute. I would show them to you, but that would be not good. Not that I won't take their privacy. I love that we're doing it this way. It's not perfect. It's not highly produced. We are very lo-fi and real deal. And I would have it no other way. The fact that I was sprinting to the lounge, I would have it no other way. This is perfect. What an anniversary. And I am so appreciative of all of you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to everyone. I hope you all have a great weekend. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
And
Take care,
Alicia wanted
everyone.
us dragging balloons through the airport next time.
Next time.
On the 10-year.
10-year will be all together. We'll schedule an all together
love it.
event. Got it?
Perfect.
Okay. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.